Hey, Jack. How do you feel about this movie?
I really don't like it. I think it's pretty nonsensical.
Well, sometimes you just gotta let go and let the movie do its thing.
Why are we shouting?
Well, you said we should record next to this waterfall just in case, but I really don't think the monsters are real. Can I go back to my podcast closet now?
Well, why wouldn't we use something like white noise generators or many of the other millions of things that humanity has created that it would make sense would break the logic of... All right, let's just stop.
Because those things aren't as high-pitched as feedback from a botched hearing aid.
Can you give me some facts about this movie?
Yes. Hello. This is Stephanie, and I'm here with Grumpy Jack. This is The Horrible Idea, and this week we're talking about Jack's favorite movie, A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
All right, we're just getting into it. So this movie was released almost exactly 3 years ago, March 9th, 2018. It was directed by John Krasinski and screenplay by Brian Wood, Scott Beck, and then John Krasinski came in and I think did some edits and rewrites and such.
The budget was anywhere from $17 to $21 million. I think most of that was fish. The box office was $341 million somehow. Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it a 96, which makes me never want to use that site again. And Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it a 83. What do the listeners have to say?
We got a pretty rosy response from the listeners. It was about 75%. I did not count your rating, Jack, because you're giving your rating in this forum. But I did have a couple people who said they enjoyed the movie, but noted some of the things that you don't like. So I think there is a way to note those things and still enjoy the movie. Yeah, but I respect that you didn't.
All right. Apparently you have some trivia about this film.
Yeah, just a few things. So the thing that cracked me up was that John Krasinski did the motion capture for the monster in the final scene. And apparently, like, in early screenings, the audience was, like, laughing. And, so frequently when they do these really early screenings, the graphics won't all be done. So they'll have some of this remaining mocap in there. And apparently the scene that they were all laughing at was John Krasinski, like, roaring in one of those fitted mocap suits, which I get. Also,
they should have left it in.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been kind of funny. So the screenwriters, this one was interesting. They said that Paramount originally wanted to incorporate this story into the Cloverfield franchise, and they did not want that because they didn't want this movie to be, like, swept up into a franchise. But I have always thought that, like, I think that they have tried to kind of veer into this, but I think the Cloverfield franchise would be really interesting if they just, like, fully committed to making it like an anthology that's all kind of in the same world, but then they just play with a different genre each time.
Right.
Because I thought, like, I like the original Cloverfield and it's, like, found footage. But 10 Cloverfield Lane is, like, one of my favorite thrillers from, recent years. I think it's really effective. And it's still, like, within the same universe. John Goodman's really good in it. But, yeah, so I thought that was kind of a fun idea. These screenwriters didn't think so, but what do they know?
I also heard they were going to make it part of the Office universe and just have him just be Jim from The Office.
So he and Pam have gotten divorced.
Yeah, and then the final villain at the end would be
Dwight.
No, the final villain was Creed.
Oh, I love Creed. Yeah, and then just one more thing is that the two screenwriters, they grew up together in Iowa. They watched numerous silent films in college, and they began working on the story that led to the film. They used their experience growing up close to farmland as the setting, including the grain silo as a place considered dangerous in their upbringing.
Another interesting fact is, like early models of Hoover vacuums, this movie both sucked and blew.
Insert canned applause here.
I will. I'm going to start doing that.
No.
Preconceptions. I never saw this movie, but I knew that I would hate it, and I was right. And so this podcast will be me congratulating myself for being right.
Because that's the number one thing people tune into podcasts for.
I mean, people who listen, yeah.
I hope that it will be a spirited conversation and not just you congratulating yourself. But, you know. So, yeah, I knew the basic premise. I knew that there was a creature or creatures. And I love a creature feature. So, and then, I knew that it was John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, and they're married in real life and blah, blah, blah. And I also knew about Noah Jupe, who plays the young boy. Oh, so also, spoiler alert, we're probably going to spoil a lot of things in this. So if you haven't watched the movie, I guess don't listen. But, anyway. So Noah Jupe plays the young boy at the beginning that doesn't die. He's throughout the movie. And he's kind of like the go-to kid right now. Like, he was really good in Honey Boy. He was in Ford versus Ferrari. He was in The Undoing. So he's kind of like the Hollywood it kid.
It's one of the kids from Stranger Things or that kid. They get all the parts. Yeah.
So I just did a really quick plot breakdown. I feel like this one is pretty recent in everyone's minds. So, in a post-apocalyptic world, a family is forced to live in silence on a quietly modified farm while hiding from monsters with ultra-sensitive hearing. The two parents do what it takes to keep their children safe in a world full of creatures hunting every sound. I found this summary online. I did not write it myself.
Well, you read it so well, so
yeah.
It all makes up for it. Yeah, so spoilers, I did not enjoy this film.
You spoiled that from the beginning, but yes.
Yeah, I think I reached this point, and it happens sometimes, where like I actually hated this movie so much that I just stopped watching it about 15 minutes in, and then kind of settled a bit. And so when I came back to it, I had already given in like a dark Jedi. I have already given in to my hate. And then I was able to sort of just like get past my dislike of it and watch it.
Did you really get past your dislike of it though?
Well, I didn't hate it anymore. My hatred did not grow. It just sort of like was there. And yeah, so I have many, many, many questions. And
yeah, we're not doing all 10 of your questions, Jack.
Can I just like go through them real quick? Or all right, whatever.
Well, only if you give me time to refute each and every one.
Sure, that would be the podcast.
All right.
The
just for the record, my first 3 questions are: number 1, Jack, you cannot have 10 questions. Number 2, you have to pick 3.
That is not a question. That is
number
also not
3,
a question.
Why are y'all fucking in an apocalypse?
It's true. Which also brings me to my first question. Why do they say grace? Like, hey, thanks God.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's a pretty basic tenet of that sort of religion, that you don't only say grace when things are great.
All right.
You ask for blessings, you ask for,
So in discussing this with my roommates, who will not name, Apparently, this was a thing that a lot of people brought up online, which was, why didn't they just live near the waterfall or a waterfall or something else loud? This way they could just, like, talk and stuff.
Right, but they didn't have a whole home pre-built next to a waterfall.
That's true. I mean, they could have built one. There was plenty of time, but...
I mean, building a home sounds loud to me.
So what happens during thunderstorms is sort of the same thing. I don't really care about
I feel like
that.
that's more of a question for these made-up monsters.
Sure.
Like, they probably just run around screaming at the sky.
All right. All right, number 4 is my main issue with this movie. The eventual weakness of the monsters seems really easy to figure out. No sign. I mean, your dog figured it out.
Yeah, he's mad. Hold on.
No scientists or hunters or military figured this out. I am an average person. All right, I'm better than average, but I'm a normal person.
I would say you're average.
And high-pitched noise is one of the first things that came to my mind. Like, literally, if this happened to me, it would be one of the first things that I would try to do. I'd get some air horns. I'd get some radios.
Right, but I don't think air horns are the kind of thing. It seems like it has to be extremely high feedback like that.
Right. Like, we have the technology. We have broadband receivers and transceivers and amplifiers.
Sure. And maybe they did that somewhere else that wasn't this small town. But also the other thing is that, well, we'll get to that later.
All right. What about white noise generators?
I mean, I feel like then they're just constantly right outside your place or
something. Well, that would be like a waterfall.
Yeah. I don't know, because then what if when you actually need to, like, leave to go to town to find medications for your son who has the flu and all of that?
What if you fart really loud? This is a very important question.
I mean...
Do you think they ate things specifically that would not upset their tummies?
Here's the thing. I think that most people can actually... I mean, unless you have a big loss of sphincter control, you can make it not be that loud.
That's one of the main pieces of gossip about John Krasinski in Hollywood.
Anal leakage.
Poor. He doesn't have a tight ring. All right. The rest of them...
I mean, I will say, I did see the printing the newspapers while the monsters were already invading. I did see this around online as well. And I agree that that's sort of like a silly plot contrivance. It was a way to, like, relay info.
Yeah, and I thought that was good. My main thing, and this is another thing I was discussing with someone else who listens to my concerns and doesn't try to censor me, that I don't connect to horror movies when I don't understand the monster's goal. And I found that's like a pretty, like that runs with James Wan. That was my big problem with a lot of James Wan stuff. If I don't understand what the monster wants, it's very hard for me to connect with the movie.
Okay, but, like, what do you think that the xenomorphs want?
In Alien?
Yeah.
I think they want to reproduce.
Okay. Well, these ones want to feed.
But they don't eat the people necessarily. Like you never see them eating people. I feel like
they definitely eat them.
And at one point you see a dead person that's just left there and they don't eat them. I don't know. My main question is, why did they make this movie? Was it personal? Like, did I do something to John Krasinski? I mean, I know I call him Jim from The Office, but I just want to apologize. He doesn't have to make a third film.
I feel fairly confident that it had absolutely nothing to do with you, but...
Wow, that's pretty bold.
I will
So
say, like, I read through a lot of reviews in the last
right,
couple days. Um, and I think most were probably a little bit more in line with where I'm at, where I'm not like, this is a landmark achievement in filmmaking, but I'm like, this was a interesting, you know, thriller that had some really cool visual storytelling that, if I just allow for some suspension of disbelief, which is a thing that I do pretty easily in most movies, I had a
sometimes in
really good
life.
time with it.
Yeah,
I and I think, I'll get into it later, but like, I think it comes down to a difference in the way that we watch movies, I think.
it's true.
Is
I will
why
now
I
say,
was able to enjoy this and why you very quickly did not.
yeah, and I think I enjoyed not liking it, but I'll now say three things that I liked about it off the top of my head, not in the notes. I thought John Krasinski was good. I liked him with his, beard rubbing, uh, bags under his eyes, my kid's dead, like just
Yeah.
raw pain. He's good, and you could kind of tell he wanted this to be good. Like he was hoping that I wouldn't see it, and he just wanted to make something.
I mean,
And I respect that.
I think he achieved that. A lot of people like this movie, Jack. I know you didn't,
Yeah,
but
but
I
a
mean,
lot of
enough that
people,
they're making a third one, so.
a lot of people like barbecue potato chips. That doesn't mean they're good. They're not. Um, who were your favorite characters?
That was only one thing you liked. You said three.
All right, I'll get
Unless
to
you're
the
counting his hopes for the movie, his beard, and
right.
his eye bags.
Um, the pacing was fine. Pacing was good. Uh, and I liked his relationship with his wife, but that's not real acting because they're married. So,
Okay, so 2.5.
who are your favorite characters?
I liked the creature. I just really love a movie monster. I love creature design. I think
Right,
we were talking about, when we were texting, we were talking about Hellraiser and how, I didn't like that movie, and you were like, well, you like the Cenobites, and I'm like, well, yeah, I liked the design of them, but I still thought they were sort of nonsensical in certain ways.
right.
But my point is, I really liked like a movie monster, and I like seeing a thing created from whole cloth, or he's basing it on other things, but that's an alien. It doesn't exist on this world that we know of. It kind of reminded me of like the Demogorgons in Stranger Things,
Yeah, yeah.
and also there was some other monster that had big long front arms like that, but the sounds that it made reminded me a lot of this video game, The Last of Us, that has these, like, they're humans, but they've been taken over with this fungus that like invades their brains and kind of turns them into zombies. But they call them clickers, and they make
Right,
that
right.
sort of noise that it was making.
Yeah.
So I like
Soon to
some
be
of
a
that.
major motion picture with
I know.
Pedro Pascal.
And I forget the actress's name, but she played Lady Mormont on Game of Thrones.
Oh,
The Lady of Bear Island. I'm really looking forward to that. I loved both of those video games, but and then I like both the kids. The two older kids. I mean, not
yeah.
the one who dies right away. I think her name is Millicent Simmons. Is the
Good
daughter.
name.
She's really great. I thought, and she had a really great interview where she was talking about the ways the different characters signed, and how John Krasinski's character does these like quick short signs that are like very like relay like his survivalist kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. Like
mindset,
almost military.
whereas the mom kind of does like soft and slow, like she's like really focused on nurturing. I mean, this movie also, we'll get into it later, but it's very like heteronormative Americana, like the
Yeah.
mother is nurturing and does laundry. But and then I think that her character's name is Reagan, the daughter. She does these like defiant, like teenage. That's how she signs when she does things, like really
Just
emphatic.
stop. Just
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah. And she's really great. And then I like Noah Jupe as well. I mean, I think he's been better in other things. Like he's mostly used here to like look scared, but
Right.
but he's still like a interesting presence to watch on screen. And I
Yeah.
love Emily Blunt. She's just awesome. She's a really great action star, so I'm hoping the part 2 gives her more like of an action thing to do.
Right.
So we'll see. What about you? Where in this morass of awfulness did you find a character to cling to?
Well, I wanted more ass. Wait, what? I like the raccoons. I thought they were great. Just did a little.
They were so chubby and cute.
Cameo. I did like the daughter. I thought she was good and defiant and so on. Whatever.
Oh dear.
I didn't particularly like the monsters. I thought they were sort of derivative and fine. Were there tropes? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
There was
definitely.
it was almost, it was like a zombie movie almost. Like it was very similar tropes to zombie movies.
Yeah, I felt like it had a mix of like zombie with something like, I'm not saying this movie is as good as Alien, but something like Alien or Jurassic Park where you kind of have to hide from this thing that's stalking you, which is, that's where it differs from a zombie movie, because zombies just kind of amble around and they don't stalk in that way. But I'd say, so sound is trigger for monsters, which, there was that whole truck scene, which was, you could say it's an homage or a derivation of Jurassic Park, where the monster's attacking the truck. And then also, like I mentioned, The Last of Us, a lot of it is based on sound. And like there's a mechanic in the game where you can like grab a bottle and you like throw it off screen or off in the other direction and then run away. And then I think that there's probably other examples of this, but like I wrote the chaos of babies in an apocalypse, which is definitely a thing here, but it was also definitely a thing in Walking Dead, which I know you also didn't like. But I feel like there's definitely other ones. But
I tried Walking Dead a bunch of times. I wanted to get into it. I like being into shows that are like in the sort of zeitgeist and being part of that conversation. Sure. I just could get into it. And I think a lot of the same reasons. Like, why are there zombies? But maybe that is answered. I don't know.
Well, I guess that's where I lose your train of thought, because I'm like, sure, but then like, why is there Freddy Krueger? Like,
I guess, yeah. I guess it's sort of two things at the same time. It's like, if I don't understand the impetus behind something, I don't like it. But if I like it, I'll actually get over that. So maybe there's some other reason why I won't get over that.
So maybe we should get into my next segment, which is, I just thought it would be a good, this is a great movie, I think, to talk about the different ways to watch things, right? And so so the way I watch things and the tendencies that I have is, I tend to get, if I really like something, I'm just in that zone. I get very immersed, unless it's, I guess if it's something that, you know, I'm trying to think. There are examples of things where I just keep getting pulled out of the movie, and I think that that's probably what you're dealing with as well. But I am very good at suspending disbelief for things like plot contrivances that have to either do exposition um, or just, the fact that it's an unrealistic situation because it's these meat flower plant head monsters that landed here from outer space. So I'm like,
Sure.
well, that's already crazy. So all right, I'm in. And so I won't always notice the plot holes that other people do. And then afterward, when they're pointed out to me, I'm like, oh yeah, that does make sense or whatever.
Right.
But I guess I'm very like buy the ticket, take the ride when I watch a movie. But there are examples where I don't, right? Like Hellraiser. I was kind of like, this doesn't make any sense from the beginning. And I like just didn't I didn't buy the take the ride in that case because I was like, who is this guy? Why do I care about him? And obviously, fill in the blanks here. But my impression is that if a movie loses your goodwill at the very beginning, you're completely out and there's no chance for it to recover.
Usually, yes. I think also it's like a big tone thing. So, that was a good example of Friday the 13th, right? Friday the 13th off the bat is ridiculous.
Nightmare on Elm Street? Yeah.
What was I saying?
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street.
They both are, but...
Yeah. And they're both like ridiculous. And sort of like, so you're going into this being like, okay, I'm watching a ridiculous thing. This movie has a sort of like...
it takes itself very seriously.
It does take itself very seriously. And I like movies that take themselves very seriously, but I hold them to a very different standard, which is why a movie like Signs, like, just infuriated me. Or, what was the other one that was basically the same exact thing as Signs? War of the Worlds, the newer War of the Worlds with...
Oh, you didn't like the Orson Welles radio drama? I know you were alive back then, so you witnessed it.
Yes, no, it frightened my grandpapa. No, the new one with Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, my problematic honey,
who has yet to appear in this. Didn't do a lot of horror stuff. Maybe he will appear. But yeah, so I think it's like movies not living up to their tone, and I am everything I do in my life pretty much is in a state of multitasking. So
yeah, you're a second screener.
I am. And I will try very hard. Like when I'm watching a movie, even a movie I love, even a movie that I really want to see, I will really try to give it 75% of my brain. But there is 20% that is thinking about what I should cook tomorrow, and 5% that is just thinking about horrible things. And so, yeah, and I am aware of the medium. I think I in my mind, I'm always watching a movie. I'm not immersed in a movie. For rare occasions that I will be.
Do you feel like it's when you go to a movie at the theater, you're far more immersed, or are you still sort of not?
I'm still, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Like I love books and I read a lot, and I often like books that make its medium apparent, like books that talk to you like books that like acknowledge that they're books, postmodern games like that, is part of it for me. So I watch a movie, I'm watching a movie. I want it to be a movie and do movie things, and it doesn't have to be real, and I'm not expecting it to be real. I'm just expecting it to make sense within the confines of what it has created. And so when you've got this sort of like hyper sharp cinematography and all of this, I don't know, there was just something about it that was super serious and super
Sure.
good. It was trying to be a good movie, and then it used bad movie logic. Now, bad movies can do that. Nightmare on Elm Street is a wonderful movie. It's a bad movie, and so it can do bad movie things.
That's actually, I think, I commented on someone's Twitter, but I think Nightmare on Elm Street might be my favorite movie we've done. That isn't something like Silence of the Lambs. That
I
like
agree. I actually watched it again, and I really like it. I think
I feel
there's a
like it hit
thing.
the sweet spot for me between being because like something like I didn't like Halloween and I didn't love Friday the 13th. I
Right.
feel like Freddy was so just over the top that I didn't really care at that point what his motivations or where he came from or whatever, because he was just so like zany and gross and bloody and funny that I was just like, well, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
care. This guy's
absolutely.
great.
I think a lot of
But go ahead.
I think a lot of these movies are not my particular fare, and so I've started looking at them in this sort of um, critical way of not like, did I like this or not? Like, was this successful? Like, did the creators of this movie succeed in what they were trying to do? Um,
But so I guess that's where, see, I think they were successful in doing what they were trying to do. Um, they wanted to make like an alien invasion post-apocalypse story about this one family, um, and the way that they've kind of had to adapt to life in flawed ways. Um, and without their focus wasn't on the global response or the how the government responded and all of those things. um
right.
and so so in my mind, I think when I think about the movie that they wanted to make, which was just about this family, I think they succeeded in that. I think that where they didn't succeed is in they could have glided over some of these things. Like they chose to do the newspapers as a way of doing exposition because it's a visual way to relay information. But then it brings up the whole idea of like who printed these newspapers. It seems like everyone was wiped out right away. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
and
so it's like some of those choices maybe not great, but um, yeah, I guess. And your mileage may vary. I think that it was like a perfectly fine domestic creature thriller.
all right. Well,
But
I think
what I was gonna say is, but there are things like tone and visual choices and all of that is, you know, subjective whether or not you enjoy it or find it to be your cup of tea. And um and also, you know, just whether or not, yeah, just the whole thing, whether or not the story vibes with you, and also whether or not you can do that suspension of disbelief um with that specific kind of story. Like with Hellraiser, I couldn't do the suspension of disbelief that Goober Frank was worth all of this drama. So I was out, in the same sort of way that you were like, I don't believe they couldn't have just taken these monsters out. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, this brings us to my different. I also have a different little entry, which is, could Jack like this movie? Like what would this movie? What would I change in this movie that I think would make it make more sense? I think the newspaper thing, a lot of those things, those are like, you can actually fix those with one or two lines of dialogue, but you would have to do that so many times that it would take up like an hour. Because like you could see the newspaper and be like, yeah, they attacked Russia first, and then America was able to figure stuff out, but then they came for us. Anyway, my idea is, as interesting as the global thing is, it's actually very sort of different than the actual tension of what happens later on in the movie. So for me, forget about the global thing. Make this like a little town in the middle of Norway or Canada or Iowa. Where are they from? Iowa, Ohio?
Yeah.
Little place in the middle of Iowa that's real quiet. And all of a sudden these monsters start coming out of the woodwork and start hunting all sounds. And then it's like, you don't have to explain all those things. It's just this little town and these monsters are there, and maybe, toxic waste or gay sex or something, causes them to come out of the hell spawn / Stargate and start killing people. That's what I would do. And then kind of like, I'm using a horrible movie as an example, but kind of like Signs, because their weakness is sort of like,
Oh, wasn't it water in that?
yeah.
Yeah, it was water.
So like in Signs, the whole thing only takes a couple of days. So like this, similarly, since their weakness I don't think is that difficult to figure out, I think the whole like them invading to the end would only be like a couple of days. That's what I would do. Maybe it would be better. Hollywood, you know where I am. You call me. We'll get this done. A quieter place. I go up to the chalkboard. I write a quiet place, and then I put an S at the end. This dollar sign.
A Quiet Places.
Yeah.
All right. All right,
Well,
James Cameron.
What was the horrible idea?
Well, I was watching a trailer for an upcoming franchise film. And this franchise is titled The Fast and the Furious. And
I'm familiar with
so it reminded me of family. That's that's my Vin Diesel impression. Your family.
Family.
Yeah, it just seems like it's about like the sacrifices we make for family. I don't really know, honestly. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff about like trauma and grief and how we take on how anyone involved with a trauma, especially like the one that occurs at the beginning of this film, can internalize it in their own way. And one thing that I do hate in movies is just how people in movies really don't like to communicate with each other, and that if they would just like talk to each other a little bit, a lot of things wouldn't have to happen.
Yeah.
And so like if the dad would have just, explained to the daughter, like, I don't blame you, and I don't know, all that crap, but maybe it wouldn't have been so bad. But yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
Also, my other thing was that when, if and when an alien invasion happens, Americans will very easily regress into kind of mid-century heteronormative familial roles and
Yeah.
women will have to do laundry, and men will go out and find food.
It's true. It will always become the road. Always. Um, I think the horrible idea of this is if you love your family enough and try really hard, it won't matter because you'll still get ripped apart by monsters. Final reactions.
Yeah, so I really liked Emily Blunt. I think I liked John Krasinski a little bit less so. Which is why, spoiler alert, I'm not that sad that he died in the end. The ending did make me more jazzed for part 2, which looks like it could be a like Rita Vertasky fights sound creatures in America in modern day. Rita Vertasky, for anyone who's not aware, is Emily Blunt's character in Live, Die, Repeat, which is an excellent action movie that I feel like not a lot of people have talked about or seen. And it's actually a really interesting Tom Cruise role because he plays sort of a like scared loser at the beginning, and then he's sort of transformed into an action hero throughout. But Emily
That's
Blunt
a weird
is
movie for a
the
lot of
clear
reasons.
badass of Emily Blunt's the clear takeaway and badass of that movie, and so
It's also
I am
called The Edge of
into.
Tomorrow, but yeah.
It was changed to Live, Die, Repeat.
You can't just change the name of a movie.
They did with what's her name, Harley Quinn. Anyway, Jack interrupted my flow, but so I did really like the way that they modified things to eliminate the sound. I like those visual storytelling touches, like the little felt pieces they use to play Monopoly instead of the metal pieces, the painted places on the floor that where the boards don't creak. I think at one point they use like lettuce as a plate. And there were definitely like logical gaps. It seemed like the amount of sound that would trigger the monsters changed at various points, but again, I think the movie's only 90 minutes, which, as I've explained, I can forgive a lot when a movie's only 90 minutes long, and I was able to just buy in on the premise, so I didn't notice those things as much. One of the things I do wish they had done is they cast a deaf actress to play the deaf character, and they build in sign language throughout the film. And I did kind of like it's not underlined, but the idea that like they were maybe better suited to have survived so long because they knew ASL already, because they have a deaf family member. But one of the things that I didn't like, and I read somewhere as well, is that they subtitled all of the ASL, but then they didn't subtitle the spoken parts. And I think if you're going 75% of the way toward, representing, a disability on screen, then just make it that much more automatically accessible for people in the
Also,
audience.
there were like
who may be
3
deaf.
conversations, so why not?
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a big deal. So that I feel like that was like, it was great to like represent that on screen, but I'm like, well, you could have gone that extra 1% to make it a little bit more inclusive in every way. But and again, I think, the fact that like it was sort of like the men do this and the women do that, and all of that was a little rote, but also I completely believe that Americans, if faced with some sort of apocalypse, would very quickly revert to safe, boring modes of relating to each other. Um, so overall, I think it was successful in what it was trying to do. It wasn't really scary. I would give it a 4 out of 10 just because I was really freaked out about that nail on the stairs that everybody kept almost stepping on.
Yeah, Chekhov's nail.
And then entertainment factor, I give it a 6. I was invested. I mean, there were certain parts that were a little slow, but I thought the performances were good, and the visual touches were great. So yeah.
Jack Fact. We always love Jack Facts. Emily Olivia Lee Blunt shares my birthday.
Wow.
The 23rd
Same
of
year?
February. No, she is a bit younger. I did not like this film. I was not scared by it, and I was not entertained by it. 0 and 1. I explained why, so there you go. Will I watch the sequel? Probably.
Wait, really?
I love hating films. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Well, it's opening in theaters in May, so.
Well, I got my second vaccine on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm getting mine in a couple weeks, so.
There you go. So join us next time where we'll be talking about Yeon Sang-ho's 2016 action horror spectacular, Train to Busan. Review us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you listen to us. Tell people about it. Don't be scared unless you want to be scared, and I'm not going to tell you how to live your life.
And if you have any interesting facts about Train to Busan, or if you have a suggestion for a different movie that might scare us or that Jack might hate, let us know on Twitter at horriblepod, or you can email us at thehorribleidea@gmail.com.
And remember.
Shh.
Yeah.
Was that it? What were you going to say?